Good afternoon. You're watching Midday Report, some of the most important news of the day. So far, I'm Claudia Czerwińska, your host. On Tuesday, Lviv bid farewell to Andriy Parubiy, a veteran politician, former Speaker of Parliament, and one of the leaders of the 2014 Maidan protests. His funeral became both a moment of mourning and a stark reminder of Ukraine's fragility in wartime.
These crowds, with their singing voices, carried Andriy on his final journey. Thousands lined the streets of Lviv to honor a man who long had symbolized Ukraine's fight for freedom. Political leaders joined the mourners, and the words cut deep.
Andriy was ready to die for Ukraine from a Russian bullet. We came here today to bid farewell to a person who is a true hero of Ukraine, the pride of Ukraine. The vile hand of a killer struck a hard blow to our society. We have lost one of our best sons.
The service took place at St. George's Cathedral, followed by a city-wide farewell in Market Square. Perubi, a Maidan leader and parliamentary speaker from 2016 to 2019, was gunned down in Lviv on Saturday. President Zelensky broke the news in his nightly address.
The circumstances of the murder of Andriy Parubiy are being investigated with the full force of our legal system. The crime was, unfortunately, carefully planned, but we're doing everything we can to solve this case.
Within 36 hours, police caught the suspect, a 52-year-old Lviv resident, posing as a courier. He faces charges of premeditated murder and weapons possession. Officials say the crime bears a Russian trace, calling it a contract-style hit. Moscow has stayed silent, but for many in Ukraine, the message feels unmistakable. Andriy Parubiy's farewell was not just a funeral. It was a warning that history, it seems, never truly forgets.
China has agreed to buy more Russian natural gas and approved a new pipeline connecting the two countries. The link, called Power of Siberia 2, has been pushed by Moscow for years and will effectively double Russia's export capacity to China.
The no-limits partnership between Moscow and Beijing has just become even more no-limits. On the back of the meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, China decided to increase natural gas imports from the north by 8 billion cubic meters a year, a 16% increase. What is even more important is that both sides signed a memorandum about the construction of a new natural gas pipeline, Power of Siberia 2. It would complement the existing Power of Siberia and more than double existing export capacity of natural gas from Russia to China. The Kremlin has pitched the project numerous times to Beijing, especially after European customers have moved away from Russian energy since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and Moscow's inability to shift more of the commodity on the global market as LNG or in liquefied natural gas due to inadequate infrastructure. China had so far resisted the new pipelines project, but with falling energy income, the Kremlin may have offered a discount too good to refuse, but it will only make Moscow more reliant on Beijing, already the biggest purchaser of Russian crude and Russian gas.
Russia-friendly leaders of Serbia and Slovakia have landed in Beijing to attend China's military parade. The event will also host leaders such as Vladimir Putin of Russia and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. According to the latest information, Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico already met with Vladimir Putin and thanked him for an increased transfer of gas from Russia to Slovakia.
Beijing's Tiananmen Square is ready for Grand Victory Day celebrations. China will mark the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender, signaling the end of World War II in Asia, a conflict that devastated China and killed millions of its people. Beijing is set to show its most advanced military technologies at the parade, including over 100 aircraft, tanks, and missiles. This rehearsal footage indicates that the event will be a meticulously choreographed display of China's military might. And many of Beijing's high-profile allies, including Vladimir Putin, are set to attend the Grand Parade. Other guests will include Iran's President Mahmoud Pezeshkian, North Korea's Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, Serbia's President Alexander Vučić, and Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko. The only leader from the European Union who will participate is Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico.
I personally regret, and I admit I do not understand, why Slovakia will be the only EU member state represented in Beijing. A new world order is emerging, with new rules of a multipolar world and a new balance of power, which is extremely important for international stability.
The parade follows the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit focused on security in Central Asia and the wider region. It also comes after a meeting between the leaders of Russia and China, during which Beijing has doubled down on its economic partnership with Moscow.
It shows that it's not afraid of the sanctions, it's not afraid of the secondary sanctions, and it's ready to import Russian hydrocarbons to fuel its big economy that is hunger for Russian gas.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization promotes a vision of multipolar world and is seen as an emerging challenge to U.S. global leadership.
The 33rd International Defense Industry Exhibition in Kielce is Poland's most important event for all things associated with the military. Over 3 days, public and private representatives are expected to sign multiple contracts to bolster Poland's defense capabilities. Our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek has more.
Each year, the south-central city of Kielce in Poland takes center stage in defense diplomacy globally. This year is expected to be no different, as over 35 delegations and 800 contractors have gathered here for bilateral and multilateral talks discussing bolstering the collective defense capabilities of the region. For Poland, this has historically been the place where some of the key contracts serving to modernize Polish armed forces have been signed, namely the Borsuk infantry fighting vehicle or the Korean-produced K2 tanks. Already the Polish defense minister has met with his Swedish counterpart Pál Jonsson for talks relating to the strengthening of Polish-Swedish cooperation as part of the NATO frameworks. Earlier today, the Polish Armaments Group, who's a patron of this event, has unveiled one of the key projects which will be being implemented in the upcoming months, in the upcoming years, and that is the Baltic Digital Defences. The project, although the details of which are not yet known, will serve to defend the critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea basin, which has become particularly vulnerable to Russia's hybrid sabotage attempts over the last couple of months. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
The Czech Republic's parliamentary elections campaign is in full swing, but so was the crutch of an assailant who attacked the right-wing opposition leader and former Prime Minister Andriy Babish during an election rally.
The incident took place on Monday in the eastern village of Dobra, where Babiš was campaigning for his ANO party ahead of the Czech parliamentary elections scheduled for October 3rd and 4th.
According to available information, an elderly man struck Mr. Andriy Babiš on the head with a French crutch. Police officers who were present at the scene immediately responded to the situation and detained the man who was leaving the scene.
On Tuesday, Babiš commented on the incident on X.
What happened yesterday must never be repeated with any politician. Violence has no place in our society.
From the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic to the opposition's leader, Babiš's security, like his political status, has undergone a downgrade.
The fundamental difference is in the number. If you have state-assigned protection, like a prime minister does, the number of bodyguards is certainly higher. I honestly have no idea how many bodyguards Mr. Babiš employs.
Although the perpetrator's motives remain unknown, ANO First Deputy Chairman Karl Havlicek blamed it all on the ruling coalition and its allies.
This attack is one of the consequences of the hateful campaign led by the Spolu coalition and the Pirates, and in recent days again by Stan.
Still, Petr Fiala, the Czech Republic's prime minister, leader of the Spolu coalition and prime minister nominee for the forthcoming parliamentary elections, condemned the attack and wished the leader of ANO a speedy recovery. Now the question is whether the attack will affect Babiš and his ANO standing, which is already leading the polls at 33% support, with only a month left for the election day.
Following the GPS jamming of the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's airplane on Sunday, an incident suspected to involve Russian interference, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte highlighted NATO's ongoing efforts to counter hybrid threats.
NATO is stepping up when it comes to hybrid, cyber, etc. And we have agreed on policies there to really be more effective in this area. I always hated the word hybrid because it sounds so cuddly, but hybrid is exactly this, jamming commercial airplanes with potentially disastrous effects. I'm not saying that we have completely cracked this and solved this altogether, but to your question, I can assure you that we are working day and night to counter this, to prevent it, and to make sure that they will not do it again.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki travels to meet Donald Trump on Wednesday under a cloud of a continuing confrontation with the centrist government in Warsaw over who is in charge of the country's foreign policy.
Nawrocki, a self-declared MAGA admirer, insists he is not bound by the government's policy and instructions for talks with Trump, and has rejected the foreign ministry involvement in his maiden official trip abroad. The unprecedented move has caused consternation and sparked warnings for the government that it, not the president, shapes Poland's foreign policy. To underline the point, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski sped across the Atlantic for a meeting with his American counterpart Marco Rubio. Both will take part in a ceremony presenting the Lech Wałęsa Solidarity Award to a representative of the Cuban opposition. They will also discuss Europe's security, his spokesman said.
Under discussion will be the United States' involvement in the security of NATO's eastern flank. The issue of Ukraine will also be addressed. As we know, the situation has stalled, and what's crucial now is Secretary Rubio's perspective on initiating any kind of peace process.
A day later, Polish President Karol Nawrocki will visit the White House. His agenda is still not clear. No representatives from the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs will accompany him.
There is a very significant split in Poland between the president and the government.
This marks another chapter in the ongoing dispute between the presidential palace and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The absence of government representatives prevents the president from making any executive decisions.
As it is, the president, as you correctly pointed out, has no way to implement whatever they discuss with Trump.
Referring to Nawrocki's meeting with his American counterpart, Sikorski insisted the president should follow the government's policy brief during the talks.
To facilitate your work, the Council of Ministers has adopted an official position. This is to ensure that you, Mr. President, have clear guidance during your discussions. Our foremost concern is that you convey the true objectives of President Putin in Ukraine and advocate for a just peace for the Ukrainian people. Secondly, we ask that you work to prevent any reduction in the presence of American troops in Europe, particularly in Poland.
Nawrocki's officials argue that he can conduct business according to his own priorities. The result is confusion about who is in charge of Polish foreign policy.
In Georgia, verdicts for more than 20 political prisoners are expected this week as daily protests against the ruling Georgian Dream Party have now stretched into their 10th month. On Tuesday, courts in Tbilisi will rule on opposition activists accused of defying investigations or joining mass rallies. Media coverage has been curtailed after Georgian Dream banned courtroom broadcasts. The trials are part of a wider crackdown that began after last October's disputed election. The ruling party claimed victory, but the opposition says the vote was rigged with Russian backing. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze's decision to suspend EU accession talks then triggered mass protests. More than 50 people have been jailed since, including most of the country's pro-Western opposition leaders. Demonstrators gathered daily outside parliament, demanding new elections and the release of prisoners. Critics warn Georgia is moving closer to Russia's orbit as the government tightens control. And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you very much for joining me here on Midday Report. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I'll see you back here very soon for more news and features.